There's nothing like getting into an interview process and then it's like, oh, one more interview. Oh, they just added this. Biggest misconception I would say is really understanding your true power when it comes to the interview. Knowing what you're coming with to the table. They all want to see your LinkedIn profile. It's like your new resume. Those are all keywords that myself as a recruiter and headhunter and hiring managers, company owners, they can search based on those words.
So Arvi, you've interviewed a number of, not say interview, you have probably interviewed a number of countless like sales engineers and tried to get them in positions. What's the number one thing that people misunderstand about getting hired in pre-sales?
The number one thing, are we talking about like interview process? Do you want me to give you more of that or just on the actual skill set side?
Let's do both. Let's start with the interview process and let's get to skill set side.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the interview side, I think that there's two ways to look at it because there's candidates that are currently employed and, they're going through a hiring process. And then there's candidates that are not employed and they're also going through a hiring process. So on the interview side, typically there honestly could be a lot of like miscommunications overall. So the biggest thing is making sure that even if you're working with a hiring manager or a recruiter like myself, to really understand what the interview process looks like when it comes to the entire interview process. So I always like to give that upfront, especially if I have full knowledge of it. And I always try to do that with my clients as well as before we even get to starting to hire candidates. If they don't have a specific interview process, we make sure we set that upfront before we even go into interviews, because honestly, there's nothing like getting into an interview process and then it's like, oh, one more interview. Oh, wait, they told me, we're going to do one more with this, or, oh, they just added this. So I would say that's the biggest thing. Misconception in a way is making sure that you understand, what you're getting into. Interview process can be longer than they sound like, even if it's like 4 steps. People reschedule, hiring managers get busy sometimes. So the interview process always takes longer than you'd expect it to. For the most part, obviously there's always outliers. On the skill set side, or I guess on the hiring side, biggest misconception I would say is really understanding your true power when it comes to the interview, or, knowing what you're coming with to the table. And I understand, people come from different, settings. Like we said, you could be currently looking for a job. So that kind of makes you, I hate the word desperate, but that makes you more motivated to get hired faster. And then the ones that do have a current job that they like, but they would love to move for a better opportunity, they're not, I would say, as motivated. Like they have a little bit more leeway. So on the skill set side is really understanding the power that you're bringing to the table, and really understanding who you're applying to, the company that you're working with to go, to go on those interviews, and not just kind of like spray and pray when it comes to the interview process, because that's just going to tire you out, honestly, more than anything. So truly understanding your skill set and then moving forward with that type of skill set and those types of interviews versus just everything that you can get your hands on.
You mentioned the aspect of someone not being desperate. We've been in that situation. Things happen in life, right? People are in that situation now currently. The power piece of it, how do you still show up? Like, I'm pretty sure you've probably helped individuals. How do you still show up so they can still get value and not just become desperate and just take something and it's the wrong something that they're taking? How do you keep that power in those situations?
So honestly, it comes down to how motivated you are to get hired. And there's going to be some times where, whoever the hiring managers or the company, that might not see your entire value at the time. So depending on your motivation, of course, I'll talk to honestly some candidates that have been out of the job market or in the job market for about 2 months, and they're very kind of set on what they're looking for. And, that's fine. But then I'll talk to some candidates that have been out in the job market for about maybe a year or a year and a half. So their criteria has really lowered down. So I don't think necessarily like that is a bad thing, getting the goal of, obviously, especially if you're in the hiring market right now, is getting your foot on the door, right? Once you have that and you have a little bit less pressure on yourself, then you can go and start maybe the hiring process again. But now you're doing it from a position of more power. So in terms of showcasing your power, I would say, honestly, the biggest thing is showcasing, just like you do, especially in pre-sales, for example, through storytelling, how you've helped increase companies, bottom line revenue, how you've helped or shorten sales cycles, things like that. So really showcasing your actual skill set to these hiring managers, to these companies, because at the end of the day, I always tell everybody, it's like, on your resume, they don't care about your tasks. They care about the outcomes that you did while you were in that role. And the faster people understand that and candidates understand that, and the more they make their LinkedIn profile like that, their resume, the more power they're going to have. The other thing to that, I would say, is, and I was actually kind of dealing with a candidate with this recently, is the hiring manager is offering us a set amount of like salary range, and the person wanted to be on the higher end, but he wasn't really sure how to ask, when to ask. The biggest thing is sell yourself in the first 2 to 3 interviews and hold everything else, at the end, where you can truly start the negotiation process. Because at the end of the day, the worst case is, let's say the salary range is 160 and you want 175. Worst case scenario, they're going to say no. And then you can decide if you want to go with the 160 or nothing, right? So the biggest thing is sell yourself in the front end of the interview and hold the rest, for the end of it.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask a question there, because that's important. Mm-hmm. You said sell yourself in the beginning. So are you saying a person, they understand they want a specific salary, but hold off, give value in the beginning, and then once you give the value in the beginning, you can ask for more later? Is that how you're saying it? Okay.
Yes, because the thing is, like, the longer you stay in the interview process now, the more involved the hiring manager is with you as well. So they've seen things that they like about you. Mm-hmm. They also want to hire. They don't want to drag this process, till the end of time. They want to make sure they get somebody good. So the more invested they are in you, the more they like you, the more they understand your value, then your leverage and your power goes up towards the end. So yeah, that's basically what I meant by that.
Okay. And let's get into, since you mentioned in regards to salary, kind of get to that aspect of it. I've, looked at the market, and the market is seen a lot of different things out there. I want to get a sense of what you've seen. I've seen people variables, 70-30, 80-20, some doing stock options, equity. I've been in situations where it's just straight salary, literally just nothing else, just a straight salary job. It's all over the place. So let's kind of dial it down to someone that's in the market, say they're 2 to 7 years in the space, mid-level. I guess, what's the quickest thing that moves the needle in salary? Is it, I won't say salary, compensation? What are we looking for? Are we looking for equity? Are we looking for stock? What do you tell candidates there?
Really, really good question. And there's going to be, honestly, a million answers to this, right, just because it really depends on what the person that is, going through this process, what they value most. I'll give you some averages and basically some ideas and ranges from here. And then obviously each candidate is going to have to really kind of hone in what is important for them versus, somebody else. When it comes to salary and compensation, especially in pre-sales, most of the roles are typically ranging around 70-30 when it comes to splits. So salary 70% and then variable commission 30. There's definitely some companies that will do 80-20. So 80-20 honestly comes more in the side of enterprise selling. So the more commercial or mid-market, you're going to see more like 60-40, especially commercial might go down to that. Mid-market will be around, 70-30, and then enterprise usually goes up to 80-20, just because obviously you have longer sales cycles to 8-9 months, all the way to 1.5 years. So obviously, as candidates or as employees, you want to be compensated for that time. And then from there, sorry, I missed the second part of the question.
No, just what's the thing that actually moves the needle? I mean, that's the salary. But are we talking about trying to get some equity, sign-on bonus in the comp package?
Yeah, and again, that kind of goes back to the power and the your motivation at the time. Everybody's going to be very different. I see people that prefer startups, so startups are usually going to be more equity driven than necessarily
Hmm.
salary and OTE. Then it will range by your seniority level, you know, where you're starting. So, for example, a founding role in sales engineering is going to offer more, pay more in salary, commission, and equity versus like somebody that's coming in as like the third or the fourth sales engineer. Your responsibilities that you're taking, how much you're also wearing in terms of hats. Especially startup world, it's very common you're wearing hats in pre-sales and post-sales and onboarding. So obviously the more hats you're wearing, the more they're going to be able to compensate as well. On the post-sale side is where you mainly see salary bases only. So if you're like a post-sale sales engineer, you might not have as much variable, you know, or maybe none at all. I have seen cases where, and this is obviously very important that you clarify before you even accept any type of offer, or make sure you read the contracts when they're being presented to you and the offers. Because there's been cases where, and not through me directly, but I've had candidates come to me that want to leave their position because of these reasons, where they thought they were getting salary and commission on the front end, you know, on the pre-sale side, and then they didn't read the contract thoroughly. So then when they signed the contract, it's actually just base, and then they have bonuses once in a while. So definitely really important that you read those. But again, it's a very wide answer in a sense. So hopefully what I just gave you gives you like a little bit more clarity. In terms of salary ranges, I would say, and again, so variable, but if you're just starting out as a sales engineer, you're probably looking at, and again, depending if it's like enterprise or mid-market or commercial, probably looking anywhere between like 80 to 120K base, plus variable commission. So that might land you around like 150, 160. And then obviously just keeps on going up from there, and depending on skill set. Another big variable as well is hard skills. So obviously there are sales engineers with less hard skills versus like more hard
Hmm.
skills. Typically, the more hard skills you have, or the harder the product is, or the more complicated, I should say, versus harder, they will compensate better, because obviously finding that type of people is way more rare than somebody that doesn't have as much hard skill and it's more like on the MarTech side. So those are
Hmm.
all things to keep in mind.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that because that's interesting. I mean, when you look at the market, those skill sets, I mean, you'll find things that are super difficult. You need certifications. You have to do coding to
Yeah.
stuff that's not. I mean, it's all over the place. And it's kind of, as a individual trying to get into the market, you're trying to figure out, what do I even hone my skill set in?
Yeah.
Right. The soft stuff, of course, you have to have. And someone told me about that you shouldn't really focus on, and get your take on this, told me you shouldn't even focus on the technology as much in knowing that, but more focus on the business value and the outcome, because that'll never go away, regardless of what tech that you're doing. What do you think about that?
Um, it's a great question, and I unfortunately the answer is it depends. It depends
Mm-hmm.
on where you want to take your career. So to give you like a very kind of plain and simple example is, if you're in the MarTech like vertical and you want to stay within that, then absolutely like soft skills are going to be way more required than any hard skills. If you're in like a DevOps or a cybersecurity or fraud and security, any of that stuff, the technology piece is going to be like 50-50 with the soft skills. It's there is no really good way to split them, because honestly you're just going to need both. There might be times where you're required to code or build demos or environments and things like that. So that skill set has to be kept up with nonstop. So it just really depends on the vertical, right? And then same thing, like, and then if you're into like, let's just say construction industry or vertical, anything like that, then, soft skills might be 70% versus hard skills might be 30%. I do agree that if you have a lot of hard skills, you definitely have to continuously work on your soft skills, because it's not something that honestly comes natural. And it's like the psychology of human beings is consistently changing. Now people catch up to things way faster than they used to. So you have to be able to try and distinguish yourself more. But honestly, even getting into this line of work, like the sales engineering or pre-sales and post-sales, you're agreeing to do both technically 50-50 at the same time, right? So it's hard to say like you have to choose this one over the other, but depending on the vertical, you have a little bit more leeway with either side of the skill set.
Great. I want to talk to you. I have a specific scenario, and I think you would be great to answer this. I know a gentleman, 12 years into the game. He's currently in the job market, interviewing for jobs, has an interview coming up, and, meeting with the recruiter very soon. I know this to be true. He's not paid what he should be getting paid at his current role. And so you mentioned salary, right? And in regards to what he said, I know typically salary comes up with recruiters on the first call. Like, so they can get a sense of what you're doing. Now, if it's the salary, and I think on the job description, he mentioned that the salary was somewhere around, I think 120, around 120. And it's more than what he's making, but feels like he should be making more. What advice would you give this individual in regards to, how he should handle that? Like, can you share anything there about that?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would do, obviously without knowing this person, if I were to deal directly with him or her, I would say, let's look at your skill set and what is in your LinkedIn profile. So typically, you'll see people that have scaled up in the company within like 5 years. So let's just say 5 times, right? And they went from and this is a way simpler example, but like from a BDR to account executive to like account executive lead. Somebody like that typically has a little bit, I would say, more negotiating power versus like somebody that's just been in the same role. Yes, he's still or she's still driving results. She's still, they're still impacting the bottom line, but the growth is not as much there. So like those are 2 different skill sets that you're looking at as well as a recruiter, as a hiring manager. So that's number 1. From there, I would look at the skill set of like, okay, let's just say you've been with this company. And again, I don't know the history, so I'm just kind of making up the background here. But let's just say you've been with this company that you feel underpaid for 5 years. What have you done for that company on an outcome base? Again, I'm always thinking outcome based. What have you done for that company to impact the bottom line? Are those stated clearly in your resume, your LinkedIn? Are you able to communicate that well to the hiring manager or whoever's doing the interview process, right? To really showcase your value. Because again, the first 2 to 3 interviews are all about selling yourself. And if you're in the sales engineering, you should know too. And, I get it. Sometimes people are not the best interview takers, but they're like really good at their job because it's easier to sell somebody else's stuff than yourself. But you do have to practice just like anything else. So you do have to practice, and honestly, with ChatGPT nowadays, this is so much easier. You have no excuse for not doing it, but you have to practice how to answer questions, how to sell yourself better, how to really showcase your value so that towards the end of that interview process, you now have the power to say, I want more, and this is why. If I come in here and, I want to increase my salary from 120 to 140, this is what you'll see from me in this company. So you're able to show them, yes, you want more. You already have this skill set and you're going to do a little bit extra, for example, to showcase that you do deserve that salary. So those are, again, just some tips and things where you can utilize. And at the end of the day, you have to prove your actual skill set the moment that you do get the job. Because again, if you don't perform, then they'll move on to someone else. So you have to also trust your abilities.
Right. So the value piece of it, as you mentioned before, just the selling aspect in the beginning of a call, making sure you're doing what you say you're going to do and being able to illustrate, because like you said, showing your outcome in yourself is exactly what you're going to do as a pre-sales SE anyway, right? It's being able to show that value. I got a gentleman that messaged me recently, and I asked him what's the biggest issue that he was dealing with in getting a pre-sales job, and he mentioned not having the right title. And when I looked at his LinkedIn, seems like he does some solution stuff. But he said not having the sales engineering title is one of the reasons why it's hard for him to get in the field. He's been in his current role for about 6 months. And I mentioned I was going to ask this question for him, so we can see if we can give him some sort of advice. I'm pretty sure you experienced that. People coming from different roles don't have the SE role and trying to get into the space. And where do you start with them? What do you do?
So where do I start? It really depends on your background. So actually, I just had a call this morning with somebody with the same exact question. They weren't really sure if they wanted to get into pre-sales or post-sales or what the difference really was. They have some hard skills, but they want to kind of start breaking into the tech world. The biggest piece of advice I gave her was, which might help on the same end, is really deciding where you want to see your career going. So again, kind of deciding if MarTech is my thing in terms of verticals, if DevOps is, or any similar the verticals that fall within DevOps, or you want to go construction based or AI based, because now there's so many AI companies. Really choosing that vertical and becoming really good at that. Usually when I get clients that want to work with me to find candidates, one of their number one requests, and it's not always a must have, but it's a very nice to have, like 90% of the time, and they would preference candidates with that type of background, is did they come from the same industry that they're in? So if they're, again, MarTech, fraud, they will always say nice to have, fraud industry or pharmaceutical or, whatever that looks like. So the biggest thing is not to try to be a master of all things. Pick one vertical, really perfect yourself in that one, and that should be the one that you follow. Now you can move within verticals, but especially if you're starting just now to get into the tech world and the sales engineering world, it's going to be impossible for you to know everything. So pick the one that's in a way the easiest that would fit your background, right? Because it might be easy for you to fit MarTech now, but for somebody else it might be easier to fit DevOps or cybersecurity. So really hone in on like what you want to start your career in. Maybe you realize you don't want that and your skill set changes later on. That's fine, but you got to put your foot in the door first. So hone in on that, focus on that, learn anything you can about that industry, put that skill set in your LinkedIn. I cannot stress this enough because honestly, nowadays, 99% of any client that I've worked with, and I say that just to leave that 1% doubt, but honestly, it's like 100%, they all want to see your LinkedIn profile. It's like your new resume. They still want the resume to have it on there because you can go more in depth, but your LinkedIn profile is like your new resume nowadays. So you have to update that, match it to LinkedIn. And again, just focus on outcome-based versus task-based when it comes to your role. Add your skill set to your LinkedIn profile. So if you're in the solution consultant, but you have skill set outside of that in terms of hard skills, Java, Python, SQL, anything that you have add it on there, because those are all keywords that myself as a recruiter and headhunter and hiring managers, company owners, they can search based on those words. So
take inventory, decide where vertical wise, where you want to go, right? Soft or hard skills, update LinkedIn. And from there, should they the interview process, is the mock demo the hardest thing people have to go through once they get through everything else?
The demo, not really, because it really depends on the company, to be honest. So the demo side, if you already have the experience as a sales engineer or any sort of sales or customer facing, the demo side, it's going to be easy in my opinion, because they're not going to give you like hard things to go and solve. They're just looking to see, okay, did you do research on most of the time companies are just looking for a presentation on their own company, or they give you like a specific customer scenario where you try to solve or you try to present. They're not going to put you in their like hard, environment and like make you create all these things from scratch. So I don't think that demo is the hard part. I think it's prepping for it, just like anything else. They're and also they're gonna give you some leeway on it because they know you don't understand everything. You're just kind of looking from the exterior in. So I don't think demo is the hard part. I mean, I guess that's just a personal opinion overall. Could be different for everybody, but As long as, you just showcase a skill set that you do well, what you're already doing, then I don't think this should be an issue. And honestly, I think that should be something that candidates should be looking for, because like we just mentioned, some candidates are not the best at selling themselves, but you put them in a demo environment and they're like going at it, and then you see their real value. So if you're really good at that and maybe lacking some of the skill set to really sell yourself, this should be your like moment to shine, and you should be looking forward to that.
Well, we'll kind of conclude here. If you have a sales engineer that wants to increase their income in the next 3 years, give us a roadmap. What should they be looking to do?
If they want to increase their income in the next 3 years, the biggest thing I would say, especially if you currently have a job that you're working in, is going to be doing as much as you can to grow within that company. Starting from, let's just say and I'm just getting a basic roadmap here, but let's just say you start as a sales engineer, then grow into a senior one, then grow into, depending what the company is, right? You can grow into mid-market, enterprise, etc., a manager and all that. That would be the best way to showcase to not only the current company that you can grow and you can do so much more than what you're currently doing, but also to other companies and hiring managers and recruiters. That's like, oh, wow, this person really wants to keep growing. Typically, if we see growth within like 3 to 5 years within the same company, it's a huge, huge positive thing for recruiters and hiring managers, because we can tell that this person does not want to stay stagnant. They want to keep growing. So us presenting an opportunity might be, way higher chance of that person taking and wanting it to grow than like somebody that's same position, same company for like 6+ years. So that would be my best advice to that.